When most people think of Vikings, images of wild-haired warriors with horned helmets and roaring longships come to mind. Popular culture has romanticized them as noble seafarers or misunderstood explorers. But for the people of 8th to 11th century Europe, the arrival of a Viking ship on the horizon was not exciting, it was horrifying. The reality of Viking raids was far more brutal, swift, and destructive than legend suggests. These were not isolated skirmishes or glorified adventures. They were calculated strikes of violence, plunder, and terror that left deep scars on medieval society. Lightning strikes from the sea. The first recorded Viking raid hit the monastery of Lindisfarne in 793 AD, off the northeast coast of England. Monks were slaughtered, sacred relics destroyed, and treasure looted. To contemporaries, it was not just an attack, it was an act of blasphemy, a sign of divine punishment. The genius of Viking raiding lay in their mobility and surprise. Longships could sail in both open seas and shallow rivers, allowing Norse warriors to strike deep into the heartlands of Europe with little warning. One moment, a peaceful village or monastery, the next, a maelstrom of axe-wielding invaders descending without mercy. Why the violence? The motives behind Viking raids were complex. Wealth, gold, silver, livestock, and slaves were easy to carry and highly valuable in Scandinavia's gift-based economy. Status, raiding brought fame and power. Young warriors proved themselves in battle and returned home with riches. Politics, local chieftains often encouraged raids to fund their power struggles. Overpopulation and hardship. Some historians argue that limited arable land and internal conflicts pushed Norsemen to seek wealth abroad. But the brutality wasn't accidental. It was strategic. By striking terror into local populations, Viking raiders could often force communities to surrender, or even pay protection money known as Danegeld. Targets, churches, towns, and anyone in between. The Vikings were equal opportunity pillagers. They targeted monasteries because they were rich, isolated, and unarmed. Towns, especially trade centers like Rouen, Dublin, and York. Rural farms where livestock and women were easy prey. Men were often killed or enslaved. Women were taken as concubines, hostages, or sold into slavery. Children were not spared. Whole communities vanished. Survivors might be left behind to tell others what happened, a warning of what awaited any who resisted. Not just random chaos, Viking raids were organized. Despite their reputation as wild savages, Viking raiders were highly organized. Many expeditions were planned by powerful warlords or even kings. Raiders worked in crews with leaders, specialists, and strict rules of loot sharing. By the 9th century, Viking raids evolved into larger invasions. Norse warriors wintered in enemy territory, built fortresses, and demanded tribute. In some cases, they conquered entire regions, like the Danelaw in England or the Kingdom of Dublin in Ireland. The human toll. The suffering caused by Viking raids was immense. Massacres of civilians, cultural and religious destruction, economic devastation, forced migrations and abandoned settlements. A thriving slave trade with captives sold from Dublin to Constantinople. For a peasant in 9th century France or England, the fear of being burned alive in your church, dragged from your home, or sold far from your land was very real. Viking legacy, more than bloodshed. As brutal as they were, the Vikings also reshaped Europe. They established new trade routes, connecting the North Atlantic to Byzantium and the Islamic world. They founded cities like Dublin and Kiev. Some Viking leaders, like Rollo of Normandy, became feudal lords and were absorbed into European politics. They triggered reforms such as the creation of standing armies, fortified towns, and naval defenses. Ironically, the terror they spread eventually helped centralize power in medieval kingdoms, pushing Europe out of feudal fragmentation. Viking raids weren't cinematic adventures or misunderstood explorations. They were brutal, calculated assaults that left lasting trauma across Europe. Yet in their wake, they forced societies to adapt, unify, and evolve. The Viking Age was not a time of peace or poetry. It was a time of fire, steel, and survival. To understand it is to see the dark heart of a world forged by conquest and the will to dominate.